a lot of people start and a lot of people think that the end is failure. And if we've all heard the acronym, failure is just your first attempt in learning. F-A-I-L.
All right, Mr. Justin Morgan, thanks so much for being on the podcast. We've got a lot to cover. So from 350 to 400 flips to stories about the storage unit and the real estate investment group that you head. So Thanks for coming on, man.
You betcha.
We're excited.
Glad to be here with you both.
So how long have you been, as far as in the investment side that you're doing with the real estate, how long have you been doing this now?
Yeah, so in the business world, I've been investing full-time since 2005.
Okay.
There's a story there. The pre-story to that is I did my first real estate deal in 1999 when I was 19 years old, but I didn't know what real estate investing was. So that's just looking back on history to say, oh my goodness, there was something inside of myself that I didn't know existed. And it came out when I was 19 years old, specifically in real estate. But I did what most people do. I went to college, got a degree, because this is what you're supposed to do.
Right.
And quickly realized about halfway through college, this wasn't what my wife and I wanted. And we got married halfway through college as well. And so I ended up full-time in real estate since 2005.
What was the deal that you did at 19?
All right. So I was serving a mission for our church as a Latter-day Saint missionary. And I was in Southern California. And I was out knocking on doors, preaching, selling the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I met a real estate investor on the streets, and he did what a lot of real estate investors should be doing, and that's asking people if they know anybody selling or anybody that would like to consider selling their home. So he asked me that, and I was teaching the gospel to somebody else that was around the corner. And I did the only thing I knew how to do at 19, and that's line up two people and say, this person is interested in this person's interested in this. And I became a connector. And because I was 19 and about the only skill I had was connecting, I ended up getting a check from that investor for $4,000, which was a lot of money for a 19-year-old that had just been working at a pizza joint prior to that. And I sent that check home to Mom and said, I promise I'm doing missionary work.
It's like, what's this $4,000 check I just received? Is that something? So fast forward a couple of years, you're in college. I'm sure that moment just kind of stuck in your head, like, hey, wait a minute, I did this and it wasn't very much work, and I did, or maybe it was, I don't know what the story was, but I made $4,000 on that deal. Was that something that was just kind of sticking in your head that maybe made you think that college isn't the way for me, and there's this other path that I want to go down?
Yeah, you make me actually think and go back a little bit in history, because I got married in 2003, halfway through college, kind of halfway through, ending the mission in 2005. And when my wife and I first rented this little teeny house in Provo, Utah, I met with the landlord, and he said, yeah, I own all 5 houses that are around you. I'm interested in selling. So here we were. And I didn't know really what a real estate investor was. I didn't know that was a career. I certainly didn't know what a real estate agent was. I had no idea that was a career. And we may end up talking about that. But I ended up hiring an attorney and spending just enough money that I was like super uncomfortable, and I didn't put a deal together. But the long story is this landlord owned these 5 houses on 2 parcels.
Okay.
And the house that we lived in was the middle house, and the property line went right down the middle. So as I'm with this attorney, and I did what I did in 1999, right? I had a landlord that wanted to sell, and I didn't want to pay rent. I thought maybe I could consider buying it, but newly married, middle of college, what do I know? So I hired an attorney to try to connect the dots, and I simply just ran out of steam paying an attorney as a 23-year-old newly married college student, and didn't put a deal together, which in hindsight would have been somewhere probably $70,000, $80,000 for each of those houses, that today would be valued closer to $300,000 to $400,000 for each of those houses, right? Because of the area, because of the college town, because of the market and what we've seen over the last, over 20 years now. I hadn't really thought about that, but same thing. Trying to put the pieces together, just happened to run out of steam on that one.
So you're working on putting that deal together. And was that something that came from, when you were 19, you remember that real estate investor and you're like, here's an opportunity. Let me see if I can figure out some way to make this work. I don't know what I'm doing quite yet, but let me see if there's some way that I can
Dude,
figure out a way to make it work.
this is such a crazy conversation because I look back and I consider myself a bit blessed to be raised in the family that I was blessed in, because somewhere along the lines I built something, was built inside of me to just be somebody that asks questions and tries to just go a little bit farther.
Mm-hmm.
And so for those that's maybe not the way they were raised, right? They feel like maybe they're at a bit of a disadvantage because they're not thinking about how to create opportunity. My dad just really, my mom, somewhere, it just, the good Lord instilled it in my brain somewhere of like, hey, get creative, ask questions. I think all of us have certain skills that we have to develop,
Mm-hmm.
and some skills that we were just given. And that was one that I was just given through my parents, through however it unfolded in my DNA, to just be curious. And so you might need to develop the art of curiosity, or you might be given the art of curiosity, but that ability can create careers in business.
Absolutely.
Business is, yeah.
I love it. So from that point forward, that deal didn't work out. But you had paid for an attorney, you had some money that was into it,
Sure,
that
yeah.
you were into it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So after that, when that deal didn't work out, were you thinking like, okay, maybe this is the wrong path. This just isn't something for me. I tried this. I lost some money on it. Or were you
Never.
like,
Never.
no, this is it. This one didn't work out, but the next one will. I just need to keep going.
Yeah. So the keep going is the conversation. The grind is the conversation, right?
Yep.
And I didn't get anything out of college. Or wait a second, did I? And what I got was
Okay.
simply, I got through it. I started something and I finished it. And although that was an $80,000 college degree, although it was years of my life, I learned something very valuable, and that was to complete. Now, a side note to that is the ability to work through that system, or some might say work people,
Mm-hmm.
right? You don't show up for a class, you miss a test, you got to meet with your professor, you got to try to figure out and sell them on the excuse of
Right.
how to still end up getting through that class, right? And
Love
so you're working people, but really the grind of college was figuring out halfway through that I didn't actually want to do anything with this degree that I was pursuing,
Okay.
but I wanted to complete it. And so that was what was necessary at that time, is just get that degree done.
I like that. It's a good lesson because even sometimes we have things where we just don't feel like doing it, and then a lot of people will quit. But you're like, no, I've started this. I'm gonna finish it. Even if I don't use it, I'm at least gonna finish it. And that's probably just carried through. If you start a project, I'm gonna finish it.
Yeah.
So many people like start, right?
Mm.
It's fun to start. Sometimes it's not fun in the middle of it, and then to actually take it through to completion. But that's what you need to.
Yeah.
That's what you need to do to make things work.
Can I add to that? Just
finish
plus
it.
one that.
Please, yeah.
And that is that a lot of people start, and a lot of people think that the end is failure. And if we've all heard the acronym, failure is just your first attempt in learning. F.A.I.L.
So true.
Oh, I like that one.
Right? And so if life, if what we do is just a first attempt in that next thing, then there really is no end. I mean, once we kick the bucket and we end up 6 feet underground, that's the end of what's here. But really, everything else in between that, right? It's been said, you have your birth date and you have your death date, right? The dash right there is what really matters, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so, like, failure is just part of the process. And so, I've just cultivated most of the time holding on to that belief and that attitude that this is just part of the journey.
It's an attempt.
It's not my definition. I just spend money on attorneys, and it's just water off a duck's back because it's just a first attempt in learning something, right? And so really at the end of the day, you either succeed or you learn.
Mm-hmm.
You don't fail,
So
right?
true.
You don't fail.
Well,
You're just learning.
Only if you quit.
If you quit,
Yeah.
if you give up, I think that's the real failure,
It
During-
is.
so during
And
that
that's
time,
the failure in learning.
That's the
because you
failure in
quit.
learning,
Yeah.
period.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So during that time when you were working on that, were you working as well? So you were working as well and then doing
through,
kind
through
of trying to get
college
some real estate
or which?
when you were working on buying those other places. So you had the 4 or 5 houses that you were
Yeah.
buying.
So when we were doing
So
that, I had a job in sales at a gym at 24 Hour Fitness,
okay,
and then going to college.
so you were doing college, work, and then real estate was just kind of a side hustle at that point in time.
I didn't know anything about it. I just was like, well, if I'm going to pay rent, then let's talk about owning it.
Okay.
And so it just came up. I might have to dig deep to figure out who might have like caused that thought to come up. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like, um, we had a neighbor in the neighborhood, and he was the attorney that I'd hired, and he was a real estate guy, so maybe it just came up as part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he was the fetcher that ended up buying him. I don't know.
Probably.
Because I
He's
brought
like,
the
you
deal to
can't
the
make
table.
this work.
Yeah, I'm going to bill you like crazy till you bleed, and I'm going to go buy them. I don't know. Yeah.
How long did it take you as far as like working when you're working and you're doing some real estate stuff before the real estate investing really became your main hustle?
So let's go 2003 to 2005 when I use that as the date that I started full time, right?
Okay.
Getting out of college helps to kind of put that period at the end of a sentence and what was next in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
2005 was a crazy time for those of us in real estate. It was what we saw during COVID with price increasing and everybody coming to the market and it just being such a seller's market. But in 2005, it was a bit more of the wild, wild west where we had less regulations, less rules, right? So I'm jumping ahead in that time frame because I just did what I had previously done in 1999 or tried to do in 2003.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw opportunity when my wife and I moved out of this little house that we were renting and we decided to buy a condo, a townhome. And we put this new construction townhome under contract. And while we were under contract, about 60 days later, the sales guy came to me. And at that time, you were just putting down $500 or $1,000 to secure your place in line while they were doing these 90, 120-day new builds, and you would get your financing in that process.
Right.
But because this was such a time where like it was a seller's market and buyers wanted to buy, the sales guy came to me. And I just was wrapping up college, 2005, right? I was preparing on what might be next to get a job with the airlines. That was my degree, was as a commercial pilot.
Okay.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
Never made any money from it, but my dad was a pilot.
Mm.
So we go back to, do what you think you should do. and what kids do, go to college and be like their dad. Right? And I did enjoy flying. I do enjoy flying. But 2005, wrapping up college, this salesman now comes to us and says, hey, I have somebody that wants to step into your position in this new construction build. They want to jump ahead in line 60 days. Would you be willing to sell your position and they'll pay you $21,000 for you to go to the back of the line so they can get into their new home sooner?
Wow.
And so you might look at that today as maybe like a wholesale deal or an assignment, some of the language that we use in our real estate investment world.
Right.
But really, it was, at that time, we didn't have some of the regulations and requirements around it. And so I had the option to go put him in our position and make as much money as I would make taking the next step of my career, making $21,000 a year or 20 grand a year.
Right.
So a light bulb kind of went off in my mind. And the question that you posed was like, when did you kind of go full time?
Yeah.
Well, in my mind, I started seeing opportunity, connecting the dots. And so I pursued real estate really for the next 4 years, going out and putting things under contract and positioning myself right to make a living in real estate in this booming new construction world that we were in.
I feel like this just kind of found you. It was like it was meant to be. So when the deal from when you're 19 and you had the 4,000, and then the other one where you had those other properties that came up, and then that.
Well,
like,
let's
it's
talk
like,
about that.
I'm pulling you in regardless, if you want to.
Dang it,
not,
Justin, you're
coming
so
in.
lucky, right? Like it
I
found
know,
you,
maybe.
right?
It
Well,
sounds like it, but maybe not. Maybe
dude,
not.
no, I think luck is. Tell me what you think.
Okay.
I think luck is when
Opportunity.
preparation and opportunity meet,
For sure.
right? And so I go
100%.
back to my childhood. At one point, my dad was working 3 jobs. One of the jobs was managing a eucalyptus forest, which
My
was a
favorite.
plant. You love it? You know
Oh,
what
yeah.
it is?
Oh yeah.
It's
Yeah.
interesting.
It's a decorative plant for floral arrangements. And the field, the
You
farm.
still have it?
What's that?
Does you still have
No,
it?
no, no.
Oh.
Yeah, long got out of it, and they're not very popular anymore.
So it's my
Interestingly enough.
favorite. So I rode motorcycles, and in California,
Yeah, I was in
in
California.
Temecula, they
Yeah.
had this orange orchard. You go through the wineries, and then just around the bend in Fallbrook, they had a eucalyptus field. And so one day I was turning down this road, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like what is that? I mean, I knew what it was, but I was like, I've never come across a eucalyptus field, and that's my favorite
Crazy,
smell.
right?
So I was
If you
just
let
like,
these things grow, they grow to be 50, 80 feet tall.
really?
But in the harvesting world, they're
Oh,
just a
it's the
6 to
most
10 foot
amazing.
plant, and you
Wow.
snip the ends off, and you use them for floral
And you can
arrangements.
still smell it when it's dried, and
Yep.
it's
And you can put it in dye, and it changes colors. So my dad's managing this eucalyptus field, right? But it got out of control, and it started to sprout. And it's at one point my dad said, "Hey, if you and your buddies, or if you want to go get some buddies to harvest these seeds, you can sell the seeds." So I, as a young 13, 14-year-old,
you were
hired one
hustling.
of my buddies and said, "I'm going to go make some money." I had a goal. I wanted to get a 4-wheeler. We lived on this
Oh,
eucalyptus
yes.
farm, right? We lived in this little mobile home.
Gosh,
It's
you
a
lucky.
200-acre farm, right? And so,
My dream.
oh, dude, dirt bikes, shooting guns at quail that were running through the eucalyptus.
Perfect.
Yeah, it was a really great childhood for those few years in Southern California, Central California. And so I ended up hiring my buddy Scott. We went out. I remember I had this big piece of cardboard that I had patched together on the lawn, and I was drying these seeds out. I distinctively remember at one point the wind came and blew one of the flaps, and the seeds went all over the grass.
Oh no.
But I ended up selling pounds of eucalyptus seeds and making money.
Yeah.
Right? So whether that's you as a kid or whether that's you with your children, like the ability to instill a goal, a 4-wheeler, and then a means to be able to start to pursue money, to see opportunity, right? Preparation, opportunity. The forest had overgrown. There was a chance to get seeds. Dad kind of like painted the picture. Podcasts paint the picture for a lot of us. What's possible out there, right? Now you start to begin to cultivate preparation. What's possible?
Right.
And then when opportunity shows up, you're like, I heard that on a podcast. That guy said this. And you can like, oh, so lucky. 10-year overnight success, right? Like preparation and opportunity line up.
I think with that though, you can train the brain to start to identify opportunity.
Absolutely.
Because I think we all come across a bunch of opportunities all the time, and people just don't recognize it. They don't see that it's there. But I always tell people, like, when you buy a car, it's like all of a sudden you see that same car everywhere, and you're like, hey, that guy bought my car. The
Dang
neighbor
it.
bought my car.
They're all
Like,
over
what-
the
what?
place.
How come nobody had this, and all of a sudden they have the car? Well, now the brain's like, hey, wait a minute, we need to pay attention to this. And I think the opportunity is the same thing. So this is something for you that you learned at a very young age, like identify some opportunity. So these things, you noticed them. Whereas like the average person probably would have just missed it, or they would have been like, oh, I'll take my 20 grand and I'll move on.
Yeah.
But you see that opportunity and say, wait a minute, there's more of these out there.
Yeah.
And I just got to go find them.
Yes.
That's incredible.
You gotta go do something that other people are not willing to do, right? Instead of sitting at home watching Netflix, maybe you're on Facebook and you're looking at something where you can buy that and turn around and sell it and make money, right? But you're getting educated. You're spending hours like in the creation mode instead of the consumption mode.
Right.
And then opportunity comes and you're like, man, why is it that like every car you buy you make money on? Right? Well, because I buy right because I know how to identify it.
Exactly. And that's why I think of spending your time, like being cautious of the content that you consume, because that helps to develop that side where you can see opportunities, such as the podcast, like you say. And those who follow you are going to start to learn a lot of opportunities because you're talking about a lot of different things that you're doing. And I think that's incredible.
We hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you back at that time and you started doing a little bit more of this, how did you go into doing the flips? Because you've done, I mean, an insane amount of flips. That's impressive. 350 to 400 or so. So many we lost count, right?
Right? Yeah. I wish I tracked them.
Right? How did you transition? How did you go into that? Was there just kind of an opportunity that came up and then you saw something, you're like, hey, I'm going to jump in this. I don't know what I'm doing yet, but I'm I'm going to try it? Or is it more like you
More real
searched it
estate
out?
stories. Yeah. So 2007 is kind of when I say I flipped my first house.
Okay.
But you won't believe who I flipped it to. The seller.
Yeah.
Specifically, I flipped it to the seller's mother.
I want to hear this.
You got to hear this, okay? So I go to the seminar, right? I started getting the idea that I need some education. I need someone else to show me how to learn. I need a mentor, right? To teach me what opportunity looks like, to teach me how to market, to teach me how to have a career in real estate, right?
Love that.
So was I full-time in 05? Was I full-time in 07? Am I full-time today? I don't know what full-time is, right? This is just a lifestyle that I've tried to create around the vehicle of real estate investments.
Mm-hmm.
So 2007, I go and I meet with a seller, and it was a kid, a builder, who had overextended himself with time and with loans, and he was in a position where he hadn't sold this house, but he had gotten a mortgage on it for himself to try to reduce his expenses and whatever his goals were there. Well, at this point, he was motivated, and the house hadn't sold, and so he met with me, and I did some creative financing that I'd learned through attending a seminar, through hiring a mentor, and I went in and did the paperwork that I was instructed to do, and I bought this property from this young builder, probably similar age to me at the time, in their mid-20s, just trying to figure out careers and what to do. And 2-3 days later, I get a phone call from an attorney. Now, being in my mid-20s, attorneys were very scary. They're not scary in my 40s.
Right, yeah.
But in my mid-20s, I immediately picked up the phone and called the only person that I knew that could help me navigate through this scary conversation I just had with an attorney, and that was my dad. Right? And I was grateful to have him. I was grateful to have him as a resource and these mentors as well. But my dad just said, in the course of this conversation with the attorney, he's like, go meet with him. And that's what the attorney wanted to do is he'd said, hey, look, I looked over your paperwork. I've been given a $25,000 retainer by the seller's mother to come after you because they're not interested in selling. You need to give the house back. You need to deed the house back. And this was a quick closing because of the way that we structured the deal, right? But we closed it with a title company. We did it as best we knew how to do it at the time. And I was scared when I heard those words of $25,000 retainer to come after me. Wow. Dad, what do I do? Go meet with the attorney. And it simply went as simple as I walked into the office with the attorney and he said, well, I've got about $2,500 worth of legal fees that I've accumulated. I've got a $25,000 retainer. If you deed the property back to me right now, I will give you a check for $22,500. And I kid you not, I walked out of his office having signed deed back to the seller with a check for $22,500. Wow. Now, is that a flip? I don't know, right? Like, is that really a flip? But it's making money because you're up at the plate and you're swinging, and every once in a while you get a base hit or a home run or whatever it is for you at that time. I mean, at that time, that was a grand slam, right? Yeah. In my world, like, I got in and out of a deal in a matter of days, selling it back to the seller, to his mother, and I made $22,500.
Right, and you go in there and you're terrified because you're in your mid-20s and you're like, oh my gosh, and attorneys yeah, you're afraid of them, but then he's like, you leave with the check. You're like, what just happened?
Yeah. I didn't have to even ask my dad, right? Like, I knew enough that I didn't want to be in a fight and I was going to profit in that moment. Like, that was a win for me, right? That was a win. So I took the money and signed the deed and went down the road.
So you did the deal with the son.
Yeah.
But the mom was like, no, you shouldn't have sold the house. So
yeah.
I'm
So
gonna go after
angry mama bear came along and tried, wanted to protect her son, whatever that story is there.
That's interesting that they were willing to.
It's totally crazy. I would have never predicted at all. Like, why didn't the son ask his mom for help in his situation? I don't know. It's not for me to know, right? We all make decisions, especially in your 20s. You're trying to remove yourself from your mom. I don't know, but that was my end of it. I made money.
He was trying to get out of a problem on his own, and then she came along.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of what the real estate investing is. Like, somebody's got a problem for one, and you're figuring out some sort of solutions, and that's where you're getting creative in some cases.
Yeah. In the moment, I've never bought a house from someone that didn't want to sell it. Now, they may change their mind 3 days later and their mom may sue you. But that's not something I'm in control of. Maybe you still get a check. Yeah, but you still get a check, right? I'm not in control of that, right? And so, like, I do good business. I meet with the sellers. I communicate with them in a way that's trying to help them. But at the end of the day, there's a reason that a seller might want to sell at a discount. And oftentimes we pay full retail, right? We'll pay full price. Sometimes it's their price, but we get our terms,
Yeah.
right? There's ways to create a win-win situation, right? There's a price terms rule that we can follow so that everybody gets out of it what they want.
Yeah.
But I've never bought a house from anybody that didn't want to sell it.
I like that you're big into education, because so with those things, you went into education first and like, let me learn exactly what this is. And that, maybe it's a seminar or whatever. And I think those can be so valuable. And you did more with that seminar than you did with the 4 hours or 4 years, not 4 hours, but 4 years
Of college.
of college,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah,
then you
for
take
sure.
that and then you start to see it kind of helps you more to recognize those opportunities.
Yeah,
I think
for
that's
sure.
incredible. So now you have a $21,000 check. You're walking out.
$22,500.
22,500.
Yep.
You're walking out of the attorney's office, and then did you call your dad?
I think I went to Vegas. I'm not sure what it
You're like,
was.
I'm gonna put it on. Like,
Yeah. I have no clue. I don't remember at all what happened there. I'm sure I talked to my dad. I mean, close relationship.
I'm just
with him,
curious
but
what it was like when you called your dad.
he probably charged me 10 grand for his advice or something. He's a businessman.
Good father
He's a
shit.
businessman.
Now you learn the cost of,
Yes,
of
yeah.
education. It
Nothing's
worked
free,
out for
son.
you,
Nothing's free.
right? And it worked out for you because you didn't know what to do, and he's like, you just need to go meet with him and see.
Well,
what
I
he's-
mean,
what he wants.
chances are, like, I joke about my dad charging me, but like, chances are, one of the reasons I give back today is because people like my dad gave to me. But
Mhm.
specifically, there's some situations that came up where other investors didn't give to me, and I don't want to show up that way for the next generation, right? And so, like, my dad most definitely didn't charge me. Most definitely I had a win, and I love when people young in their career or young children can have wins,
Mhm.
because that starts to wire neural pathways around business that teach them to take risks, that teach them to keep trying, that teach them to fail forward, to
Love
keep
it.
having that first attempt in learning when they can have a win at the beginning. Because if you just come out of the gate and you have a loss, like, it's hard. It's hard. It takes extra effort inside, really internal fortitude
For sure.
to get back on the horse when you've been bucked off and you're at the beginning of the rodeo, right?
So does that lead us into you getting bucked by a horse?
Yeah, there are stories there. Yeah. Yes, there's stories there for sure.
No, that's great, because a lot of times when people, when they face that and they have that failure, they'll quit. They'll think
They'll quit.
that's proof that
I
this
want to
isn't,
be the
this isn't for
mentor.
me.
I want to be the dad. I want to be the guy that gives people hope and doesn't just slam a door in their face and then it changes the trajectory of their life.
So really quick, I was talking to your son the other night,
Yeah.
and as he's sharing his imagination stories,
Which kid?
which one do you think?
Oh, imagination would have to be the young one. Yeah.
Well, and he's like talking about his whole journey of like flipping up, essentially, like, take.
Did he share the penny challenge?
Yes.
Yes,
Oh
that was
my
incredible.
goodness. Yeah.
So I mean, clearly, like you're succeeding in that attempt to.
Thank you. Yeah, just trying to
teach.
cultivate those wins.
Yeah.
And
I mean, share really quick, just from like it was a penny challenge.
yeah, so I think it was a YouTube thing that
Okay.
some influencers had shared some videos where they do this, like, start with a penny and trade up
Yeah.
challenge. And I think he was 7 or 8 at the time. This is going back a few years. And so he decided he wanted to do that same thing. And so he took a penny, and I don't know how far he took it, but
yeah.
one of the last things I know is, it was over $100
Yes.
that he had created through just trading a penny for a pen,
Yeah.
a pen for something else. And some of these YouTubers have taken it to, like, getting a car
Yeah.
and some pretty crazy stuff. But for a 7 or 8-year-old, $100 was a big win.
Yeah. Well, and just his attitude towards that experience.
It was a game.
Yeah.
The
But
game of the
he's
money
so
is a
ambitious.
game.
That was
Yeah.
awesome.
So ambitious. He's
Yeah,
just like no fear.
That kid's great.
Just yeah, and he'll talk your
He
ear off.
teaches me more than I teach him. He's a good kid.
I mean, you're kind of at his mercy.
Yeah, you are. You're at the mercy of that energy when he's awake.
Yeah.
So tell me about you're big in the family and you have these fun Fridays. And I
Yeah.
see you post about those occasionally. So tell me about what is Fun Fridays?
Hashtag Fun Friday.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just really living with intention, right? And I think maybe I picked this up over the years of planning work around your life, right? Not the other way around. There's a law out there, Parkinson's law. Time expands to the area in which we give it. And so somewhere in the industrial era, we decided 40 hours a week was your work week, right? And then sometimes it's 50 and sometimes it's 60 because we just expand work to the time in which we get it. But I've never met anybody that's gone on vacation and doesn't feel like they crammed in at least 80 or 90 or 100% of the work they had to get done prior to going on vacation. Right. And sometimes that's a 2-day work week and then they're on vacation.
Right.
And so Fun Fridays, hashtag Fun Fridays on social media is about intentionally taking off Fridays to be with my family, to do something intentional that then leads to another pillar, and that is having experiences. So we try to do something intentional as a family that's an experience. So this isn't like just taking Friday off and hanging around the house. I mean, although sometimes we hang around the house, it's with the intention of doing a project that will hopefully teach a skill or develop something that's greater than just doing nothing on that day. So I want my kids to know that dad can work hard, right? We can work smart, we can play hard, we can have fun, right? But Fun Fridays are meant to be that day, which really at the end of the day works out perfect because I can go out, I can recreate, I can be with my family, we can get our hearts pumping, we can go have an adventure, we can do something intentional together. But then on Saturdays, I can take care of all that daddy to do stuff. I can take care of time around the home, right? I can worship on Sundays or prepare, recoup for what's coming in on Monday. And then I can go out on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I can work a week, however many hours that be, but with the intention that, man, we're going skiing on Friday.
Right.
We're going to go to the lake on Friday. We're going to go do a project together as a family that moves our home, teaches some skills to our kids on Friday.
I love that you prioritize time with family because I think a lot of people who achieve success, sometimes that's where they sacrifice, is not spending time with the family, and they just go all in on the career, and then the family kind of suffers. Where you've figured out a way to prioritize the family and have the career kind of go around, working around the time with the family.
You just have to do it, right? Like it's just a choice. And I'll say, like, there's more dopamine hits at the office. I feel better oftentimes at the office because the rewards of home life don't show up for years.
Yeah.
Or the penalties of home life don't show up for years, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I've got 2 teenage kids and a very spicy 11-year-old now. And like, I definitely know where I fell short, in the decades prior to where they're at today. But Fun Fridays have been a part of our schedule for years to try to change that. Because I value experiences. I value adventure, and I want my kids to lean into that. In fact, just yesterday, my 17-year-old, just himself and friends, went skiing on a Wednesday, and just them. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like the independence that they get to experience of going out and doing that. Like I'm super excited for him and many other things that he's doing. But that's just one of like being with friends, building those memories because dad's taught him how to go be comfortable on the slopes.
Yeah. So that's awesome. Like, so leading into this $1 million life, like living $1 million life, like what does that look like?
The principle of like $1 million family and how to live like a millionaire without $1 million in the bank.
Right.
Yeah. So, I throughout real estate, there's 3 main areas of income in real estate. There's now money, there's massive money, and there's passive money, right? And I think a lot of us get into real estate. Sometimes it's the throw $100 bills in the air and it's act like a rapper. But for most of us, right, like without the social media hype of real estate investing, it's because we want lifestyle. We really want to create passive income, or what we perceive will be passive income, and to be able to live life on our terms. When I speak to groups, when I ask people like, what does money provide ultimately for you? One word stands out, and that's freedom. Right? It's to be an agent unto yourself. It's to be able to be free to choose. And so money that we operate in this world economy like controls a lot of us, right? We're not agents if we are told when to show up and we have to work a certain number of hours, right? We don't get to make choice. And so achieving financial independence is a goal that I've had for myself, and I want others to be able to get there because that's when they can start to really learn the most about themselves, right? Entrepreneurship is the best self-development program.
Yes.
Because ultimately 100%. You're going to learn the most about yourself. And it's scary achieving certain levels, different levels of financial success, what shows up and the work we have to do on ourselves to push past that.
Absolutely.
And we know that's true of money because people that win the lottery or go into professional sports, 95, 99% of them end up just blowing the money because they've not learned about themselves, right? And so $1 Million Family is about simply principles. I use real estate investing as the vehicle that provides now money, massive money, and passive money. The only business I know that can provide all three of those things to be able to get you to live life like a millionaire. And at the end of the day, if you were given $1 million and it went into your bank and you wanted to live life on your terms, you can eat the golden goose and diminish that, or you can learn how to invest. And if you learn how to invest, a fantastic rate of return might be, I don't know, throw a number out there.
20% would be
20% would be great. So could we say 12% because the math's easy? 12%
Sure.
would be above CDs, above market returns, right? You go and you invest it and get a 12% return on $1 million. That's $120,000 a year. It's easy math because $120,000 a year is 10 grand a month.
Mm-hmm.
So, whereas most people, a lot of people have the goal of putting $1 million in the bank. Then I can afford a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, I can go on vacations. $1 million doesn't go very far anymore, but what they feel when they say that is they feel like they can live life on their terms if they put $1 million in the bank. The reality is, you put $1 million in the bank, you're going to stress out about where to invest it. You're going to stress out about your family members asking you to borrow money. You're going to stress out about, am I going to make a bad decision with my investing?
Yes.
But if you learn, if you skill stack in the real estate space and you learn skills to be able to just go out and collect passive income, go from now money to a little bit of massive money to then be able to invest and get some passive money. Is it not true then that hitting $10,000 a month in passive income would be $120,000 a year, would be the same as a 12% return on $1 million in the bank? So you can live like a millionaire today with 10 grand coming in the bank, coming into your account through the correct investments. And you don't have to worry about someone asking you for a loan. You don't have to worry about somebody trying to steal it from you. You don't have to worry about the bank going out of business and becoming insolvent, which became something that just showed up for us in the last few years.
Right.
You now know how to invest and to get returns that provide a $10,000 a month passive investment, and you're living like a millionaire as if you had $1 million in the bank.
So what strategies have you done to create that passive income, or what would you advise people to do in order to get that?
I'm a huge real estate guy.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
But
Very true.
foundationally, it's skill stacking.
I love it.
Right. So if I think we talked about this last week in some of the groups that you and I are in.
Yeah.
And really at the end of the day, if the goal is blank, work backwards and what do you have to do to get that? And I don't mean backwards like going down. I mean like look at it linear, right? If the goal is I want $1 million in the bank. Well, do I really? Or maybe I just want 10 grand a month. And if I want 10 grand a month, there's different avenues to be able to do that. You could buy businesses to be able to get to passive or semi-passive income, right? I've chosen the vehicle of real estate investments. That's come by the way of different types of assets that produce cash flow to be able to give monthly income so you can live a little bit more of life on your terms. Now, there's very few fully passive investments, but there's a lot of semi-passive that still allow you to work, still allow you to contribute, but still allow you to be in control of your time and live life on your terms, which is truly living life like a millionaire.
Love it. Yeah, that's awesome. So the passive stuff obviously really big for you because you're big on freedom. You're not prioritizing like wealth and just getting as rich as I can and have as much as I can. For you, the priority is really freedom so that you can spend more time with the family. That's what's the most valuable there for you. And I love that. A little while ago, you faced a challenge that freedom really made a big difference for you. It enabled you to spend more time with the family, whereas somebody who hadn't created that, who hadn't thought about that, life would have been a lot different. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
It might be a little challenging, I know.
Yeah, I can't talk about my family and some challenges that we got to navigate through without maybe welling up a little bit in the eyes, right?
I
And
understand.
right now, we are standing 8 days shy of our 2 year anniversary of this challenge showing up in life. So, um, my son came down with leukemia, childhood cancer, at 16 years old 2 years ago, and I didn't know what would transpire. And when you have that C word that's brought up into your life, you know, you're walking down this long hall at the hospital and you are like, crap, I'm in a movie scene. What's
Yeah.
at the end of this hall? I got two doctors leading me and my wife down this hall, and it was cancer. And this was after a series of events that had unfolded, you know, the hours prior to that, and a life flight trip 4 hours north, and some very scary stuff. But we were told we're going to be the parents of a kid fighting cancer and leukemia, which is a blood cancer. And I went into that, interestingly enough, because of some self development that I'd been involved in
Mhm.
that recently, more recently, just 2 years ago, had caused me to feel like I could go through some challenges. I could really lean into the hero version of myself because we have these demons, right? There's a good guy and there's a bad
For
guy,
sure.
and it's in us, right? Every Disney movie has a good guy and a bad guy. Well, we've got that inside of ourselves, and we can show up how we want to show up on stage. And I'd really come to realize that I'm going to crush these demons inside of myself, and I'm going to show up as the hero version of me for me because I love me. And that wasn't something I could always say. I didn't love me.
Yeah.
I didn't even know me. I had my childhood stuff that had kind of suppressed a love, and it had served me because I had masked it with work and with income, and I tried to create value to prove to myself I was worthy. But I was kind of beyond that. We had a portfolio of vacation rental properties. There was cash that was being produced by those vacation rental properties. We were looking at life going, man, I don't really need to work, which caused an identity crisis when you're tied up in your work as your identity to mask the trauma. We won't get into all of that, but like this was like my story, right?
Yeah.
Like I was going through this, and I was really transcending some of those obstacles and bringing some of that stuff up to the surface. That then the next thing, the good Lord, the universe says, we're going to make you grow a little bit more. And we end up in that hospital. I end up there for the first week, the second week. We ended up there for 31 days straight. But during that time, I got to look back at my career and I got to be present with my son for those 31 days. I got to be in that hospital. I didn't leave it for the first, it was like 2.5 weeks.
Mhm.
My wife was there the entire time. She didn't come home for 31 days. I came back, checked in with the kids, the other kids at home, and took care of some of the stuff. But I realized I was only dad there
Wow.
during that time on that cancer floor. And I realized the blessing that real estate had brought into my life to be in that moment.
Wow.
You know, at that point, we're what, 18, 19 years of real estate, right? We're some great successes, we're a lot of failures, barely avoided bankruptcy during one point in this career. And here I am, not worrying about money and being present for my family. And I took much of that year off. In fact, we ended up selling some of our vacation rentals and some things changed with money, but I had a different perspective, right? It wasn't about the money. It was about being present in the moment. It was about finding the hero version of myself so that I could stand up as Batman for my family and I could be there for them at that time, beating off everything that was flying at me from Gotham City,
Right.
right? From all the bad guys that were there. And a lot of those bad guys were just the mental battles that was in our head. I mean, my wife and I went to the depths, absolute depths of our relationship, trying to figure out how to navigate life with a kid that's fighting for his life. And that's something that I hope to instill in other parents, other dads, because you never know when that challenge is going to show up, and money is going to be the determining factor of whether or not you can be there or whether you can't. My mentor said this week, and I had to check myself. He said, if you got a phone call right now and someone said, I need you to wire $1 million or I'm going to kill your kid, most of us couldn't do it in the world, right? Most of us couldn't come up with that. And if that's the case, then the decisions you're making right now are not the right decisions that allow you to show up for your family the way that you say you want to show up for your family. So make better decisions, do the hard work, do the preparation so when the opportunity shows up, you get lucky and you can be around financially for your family.
I think a lot of people don't think about those things that can come up in life, right? They're just going day to day, and don't realize, like, I think it's important for people to find that financial abundance, because there are things like that that come up in life. And if something like that comes up, some sort of challenge, and it bankrupts you, or you have to go to work every day to try to provide while they're going through that, and you can't be present, like, that's a huge cost. And I think it's better if you recognize that, to pay the other costs up front, get yourself to where you're in a good position. So if something like that happens, because it does, it's unexpected. It happens. We all face those types of things that come up, and we've got to be able to take that time and spend it with them, because that's what really matters.
Yes.
And so I love that you were able to do that for that amount of time, and that could have made a big difference for him as far as recovery.
Yeah.
Because now he's not. I mean, if he had to face something like that alone,
And by the
half
way,
of
we're
the week,
cancer free, so
right?
we have recovered.
Yes, I love that. And I want to get into some of that
Yeah,
stuff as well.
There's the exclamation point. We're grateful
But
to be the parents of a kid that beat cancer.
yeah,
That's not always the case,
right.
right? But at least you're there. You're part of
Yeah,
it.
he didn't have to face it alone.
Yeah.
You were able to say, okay, we're going to put this stuff off for a little bit.
And I'll
We're
tell
in a
you,
good
brother,
spot,
there were
and I
kids
can be
there facing it alone.
Hmm.
There were kids there waking up with nobody in their room. That's rough, man. Freaking rough. And I'm there, my wife's there, and we're like, man, look how blessed we are, right? Like, pretty big deal. Pretty big deal.
That's rough.
Yeah.
I think it's so important for families to do what they can to learn these skill stack, and so that if something happens there, like, no child should have to face that alone.
Absolutely.
That's rough.
Yeah.
Earlier, a few months ago, I thought this was just, I mean, this was just amazing. I saw you posting about your son recovering, and you guys were doing a marathon together. And I saw this picture of you taking it with him, and they're running, and just the joy that I could see in your face from passing the finish line with your son, when maybe a year before you didn't know that moment could happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What was that like when you passed that finish line?
So many cool things happened in preparation for that. We knew we were cancer free at that point, right? So I took that opportunity to try to, again, do the internal work. And so I'd end up going to bed late, waking up early that marathon morning. And my son had decided to do this marathon as part of a coaching program that he is in. And he's 17 now. His mentor is 23, 24 years old, just a little bit ahead of him. His mentor runs a program that's all around mind, muscle, and beyond, right?
Okay.
He's 17, he wants to get big. And as part of that, they put these kids into challenges. And so one of the preceding challenges was, how many steps can you do in 30 days? And so my son leaned into that challenge, and he used that as part of his marathon training, and accomplished almost 750,000 steps in a month.
Wow.
That's averaging almost 30 miles a day.
Wow.
Right? So really cool, right? So we go
amazing.
into this marathon, and I wanted to do some healing, right? Because, dude, I've got some damage control to do, just on how I handled some things during everything I've done as a parent, but specifically during the high stress of cancer and all of that. And so for almost a year, my son was like, do not talk about cancer. Do not mention it. I don't want to be the cancer kid. I don't want to bring up those emotions that are unprocessed, right? Emotions buried alive never die, and we need to let some emotions die so we can heal. And so as we do each one of these miles on the marathon, I had recorded a little message, and I had reflected on the bone bleed and the pain of what that was Or I reflected on the 72 times that he was poked with a needle in 31 days, and he hated needles. No problem now. He hated needles, right? And he was, at one point, he was just black and blue in his stomach because they'd poked him so many times. And I got to share. Some of it was humorous, like here's a reflection of hospital food, right? But we got to go through some of these memories, each one of these miles. And although he didn't talk because he was maxed out, right? He was pushing it. He shared very little, but he was in it. I got to run side by side with him and then experience that healing emotion of doing something difficult, of having an adventure together, of being intentional and accomplishing something that he can check a box and he can always go back to. When times are hard,
Yes.
I'm a marathon finisher. When times are hard, I'm a cancer survivor. When times are hard, I've skill stacked through difficult things. I'm becoming the hero version of myself.
I am a badass.
I'm a badass, right? I'm a badass. Absolutely.
Yeah. So going back a little bit, you talked about the demons within, right?
Yeah.
So if we were to put a name to that, I would call it ego.
Yeah.
So what, like, in my mind, mindset is everything, right? Like, to be able to become self-aware and recognize when you're in an egoic state, and to recognize like when your ego is at the forefront. What would you say, like, you were able to like become aware of that helped you recognize that and conquer it?
Like, what did I do to become aware of the ego was there? I think of a book by Ryan Holiday, Ego is the Enemy. I think that's the first time many years ago, it might have been a decade or more, that I kind of put a name, right? And I recognized, whereas the ego can serve us as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? But it can be an enemy to us. So that's one thing that comes to mind, is like leaning into learning about this inside of ourselves. And a lot of people quit learning as soon as they get out of school.
Yeah.
Right?
Have you, really quick, have you
Yeah.
read New Earth by Eckhart Tolle?
I have not.
Oh, it's incredible.
Okay.
Like,
I've read a bunch of his other, Power of Now and some of his other books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's just mind blowing. But so what did you, like, when you recognized that there was ego, right? Like, what did you do to conquer, like, to grow past that ego?
I would like to say what I did. Man, it's a continual journey almost every day.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah.
I think that there's
He's
these
sneaky.
steps, right? Yeah, he's sneaky.
Yeah.
Very, very sneaky. That little devil on the shoulder,
yeah.
right? Like comes in. So the thing that made the biggest impact for me just a few years ago, pre-cancer, pre-childhood, all of that, but really where I went from some financial independence to like sabotaging, like masking, because like we can use work, being
Yeah.
busy, to feed the ego.
Absolutely.
I'm busy. We hear it all the time.
Mhm.
I'm so busy. That's just the ego talking, right? Some of it's cultural, like, I'm so busy, look at me, right? We can look at our accomplishments to feed the ego. Maybe a title, maybe something there, right? But really, like, at some point you achieve financial success, and then it's like consumption can become the ego.
Yeah.
Right? Buy this, buy that, do that, look at that. Like, and that's just another form of it showing up in our lives. And I've been through a lot of those phases, right? Like, sadly, I've been through a lot of those phases, but it's okay because it's gotten me to a place where I'm at today. And that place led me during that journey to work on myself. And one of the modalities that I chose was cold therapy, cold plunges.
Yes.
And that's, for me, that's a very quick way to silence the demon inside, to calm the mind when the body is screaming that you should not be in cold water, and yet you stay in that cold water, and silence that mind, that internal badass comes out, that I have done something hard. And so starting with that at the beginning of the day is just an incredible thing to do. And I have just made that a part of my life. Years ago, I thought I was going to start a podcast called Embrace the Suck, right? Because like, this is a way that we get to grow. And it's actually a saying that they use in the military, right? Embrace the suck. Like, it's a Marine thing, like keep charging, because of what we can grow, how we can grow when we embrace those challenges. And so maybe it's just getting up at a certain time of day for somebody, and that's like the challenge, right? Maybe it's getting up and then an hour later getting in the cold plunge. Maybe it's getting up and going right to the cold plunge. I really like to experiment with some of those things to see what I can do to silence the demon inside. And for me, doing endurance sports is a big part of that. Like you quiet the mind when you're stressing the body, and it's amazing what you can do to control that ego that keeps showing up in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
You're constantly doing some sort of self-development, and you have for quite a few years, right? And we've talked about this a lot. Those challenging times that you've had, do you think you would have been able to get through them the same without those skills that you've learned going through that self-development?
You
Did
can
it
get
play a
through
big
it,
role?
and you can get through it healthy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that choice is yours.
I like that.
It's each of our own choice, right? And so occasionally you find somebody that takes the route of taking their own life and getting away from their own misery,
Mm-hmm.
which is really unfortunate, right? Pretty cowardly approach to do it. But sometimes you know, we're each blessed with our own challenges that we can choose how we're going to approach them. I can just testify that the more we just stack these little things, that it just becomes our ability to be able to take on. And I hinted at this earlier, but I believe it was cold therapy and then doing the self-development work that allowed me to show up as the hero version of myself with cancer. And interestingly enough, in our neighborhood, we've had 3 childhood cancer cases.
Mm.
Apparently don't move into our neighborhood.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I'm staying away.
Sadly,
I'm-
cancer's everywhere, right?
I don't know if I'm
Sadly,
gonna come visit.
Yeah. Don't drink the water. But 2 of those families have ended up in divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sad
Wow.
for that, right? And my wife and I got very, very close to that at
Wow.
one point. At one point, I actually left home for a week. And there's another story there and how we overcame that challenge. But we're back together. We're stronger than ever. We're doing our own work ourselves individually so that 100% and 100% can come together. It's not 50-50, right? And I look back and I say, cold therapy, but all those little things that I did in self-development, right, has helped stack to be able to take on the challenge of cancer. And so my hope for others is do the work now, build the muscle now, stress the muscle now so the brain is stronger, because you will have challenges show up.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody can get through them. It's just how healthy you get through them.
Yeah.
Depends on the work you do before.
Yeah. So I have to ask, there aren't too many couples that I come across that I'm just like, you guys are crushing it. I mean, Stephanie's amazing, obviously.
She's a rat.
There's a side to you that I've never seen.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what I want to know is in the world today that we live in, relationships are taken for granted, and I truly believe, and actually one of my mentors had said it, Ben Moore. He said, when my relationship is great, everything else is great.
Yeah.
When my relationship is not great, everything else is not great. Mm-hmm. So I think that we don't put enough emphasis on those relationships. So what's something that you can share that has really been successful for your guys' relationship?
Oh man, is that going to be our next podcast?
I know.
Right.
Really,
I know.
That's a really important
We
topic.
should go on
It
with
really
all 4
is,
of us.
yeah.
Yeah, we should. Where's Stephanie?
Like
on
you
this,
guys
right?
can teach us.
Yes, where's Stephanie?
I don't know about you guys, but I'm perfect.
Yeah, I
so.
don't know. Right? Yeah. I'm doing really good myself. Look at me, right? Look at Stephanie. I'm doing really good. So the thing that comes to mind, like, I'll go back to the 100% and the 100%.
Yes.
A lot of people get into relationships and go, oh, this is 50-50.
Yeah.
Right? Like, to have a fantastic relationship, you both have to be doing the work.
Right.
And that's a big word, but the work is what happens, right, in our hearts and in the 6 inches of real estate between our ears,
Mm-hmm.
right? How we process things. And it was just a number of years ago that I took some principles of business, which for me was this mentorship, this coaching, this learning from others,
Mm-hmm.
that had translated into a good business that translated into some finances, and that helped life. But I said, I think my kids are getting older and I don't have a few things figured out. I think my wife's and my relationship is experiencing new things, and I don't have anybody to lean on. Nobody taught me how to be married 20 plus years, right? No one taught me how to deal with teenage kids. And so I leaned into a group, Front Row Dads, that was surrounding myself with other men doing this work
Mm-hmm.
to be able to be 100% the best version of myself. And I can only speak for myself, right? Stephanie has her version and what she's done and what she's going through. I wish there was a magic bullet that says, hey, we did this and look, great relationship, right? But it's work, and it's the work that you do on yourself, because ultimately that's all that we can change. So even when I last week get out a piece of paper on Thursday morning and I write down how freaking frustrated I am. Now, this is a practice that I learned from another mentor, right? And that is rip on paper, not people,
Oh, okay.
right?
Love that.
Rip on paper, not people. And although I'm not always perfect at that, right? Especially with the ones you love the most, they're always going to be there, right? We release, but you can emotionally release. Again, this whole conversation around emotional intelligence and energy,
Yeah.
and like pulling stuff up from our past, and like, this is why I'm frustrated, right? So I rip, and I kind of got it out on paper, right? This is in the morning hours of journaling, and and then I was in a dark spot, right? I was feeling it. Swords were coming out, right? Like it was everybody else's problem,
Yeah.
right? The weight of the world was on my shoulders. At least that's the way I perceived it. So I made the conscious decision, because I've learned that the art of gratitude changes everything. It changes the perspective, and it allows me to be authentic. It allows me to be the best version of myself when I'm in gratitude.
Yeah.
And so I said, all right, I'm going to write double the amount of gratitudes to what this half a page of frustrations were. And I'm at our kitchen island, and I'm starting to get hungry at this point of the morning. So I get up and I cook some eggs, and I say, I cannot eat my eggs until I finish this whole page.
Wow.
So I started writing the gratitudes. And they were hard. They were really hard that morning. And I generally do gratitudes every morning. I try to do 3 gratitudes for my wife, 3 gratitudes for each of my kids. I started this practice years ago.
Love it.
About a year into that practice, I'll just add a side note. About a year into that practice, it just occurred to me, why the hell am I not doing gratitudes for me?
Yeah.
And so I added myself to the list. My wife, my 3 kids, and then I added myself to the list.
That's really
Right?
good.
Yeah.
And that's just a practice that I incorporated, which helps me show up for me.
Yeah.
And be appreciative for the work I'm doing for me, because it's hard.
Yeah.
So I cook the eggs. They're right there. There's salt, there's pepper. I'm hungry. I'm excited to eat these eggs, but I'm going to do this list. So I do the list, the page. And I'm like, I'm not better. All right. I'm going to do a second page.
Wow.
No food. Get the page. I'll tell you, my eggs were very cold by the time I was done. Right? They were very cold. But that absolutely 100% changed the day, and it's changed the week. And this happened 6 days after I came off of an event where I was pretty high on life. I was feeling really good. And I just kind of got back into that old pattern. And I didn't like that pattern. I didn't like that who I was that morning. And it probably started more of that evening, and the weight of the day was on my shoulders. But dude, that changed everything, right? And now that's 10 days ago, roughly, from when we're speaking right now. But I'm still in that energy vibration of gratitude, because I just chose to do the work, because I just chose to show up at an event. They showed up at another event to stack little skills that caused me to sit down, to show up to myself, because I can sit in a cold plunge and I can get freezing cold and I can silence the demons. So I can certainly sit in front of my eggs, which were my reward at the end of this page of gratitudes. But then I just challenged myself to do a second page, right? And stay in that plunge a little bit longer. And that mental strength that we do for ourselves allow us to show up better for our spouses.
So do you share that with her, or do you just keep it to yourself?
Did I share that experience with her? I did.
Oh,
I actually shared it with some people at work first, though, because I don't think I'd shown up the best version of myself the day before. and I needed to let them know, hey, I was not in the vibration energy that I wanted to be in,
Mhm.
but I'm doing the work, and here's what I did, right? And
Mhm.
so, like, it's important people know. It's important that we
Yeah.
have these conversations, that we're all humans trying to figure out this thing we call life, and that although social media makes it look like half of us have it figured out, right? We don't. We all have our
Nobody has it
demons.
figured out.
Right.
No, but I like that you've come up with various ways to have a reset when you need it, and
I'm
you
learning.
do those.
I'm honoring myself that I reset quicker
Okay,
Mhm.
I love
10 days ago than I might have normally.
Yeah.
it.
Like that I can go back and say, yeah, I did not show up for Fun Friday
Yeah.
3 months ago when I had the exact same thing happen on, and I let it go all of Friday, all of Saturday, all of Sunday, and then I disappeared into my work on Monday.
Yeah.
Right? Like maybe going back farther than 3 years, but like that pattern's existed in my life.
Yeah.
It's everybody else's problem. I'm gonna wallow in my sorrow, but like I honor myself for like having the tools and the mental strength because of the work
Creating,
to
right?
do that, because then life unfolds. And if you want to attract abundance in your life, you better stay in a good vibration energy.
100%.
And you got to do the work to stay in that vibration energy.
And I think the important thing for people to know and understand is that no matter where you're at, however, successful you get, you're going to still have those days. They're still there. You're not going to get out of them, right?
Money doesn't
The
solve it.
difference is how long do you stay there?
And
That's
I
the
would say,
biggest difference.
I'd say like money, success, all that stuff just magnifies whatever
Oh, for sure.
you haven't figured out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, that's true in my life.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Like
then
it's easy to budget 3,000. It's really hard to budget 30,000 if you don't figure out a few things.
right.
A lot more fights to have.
And if those people just stay, in that moment rather than resetting, years can go by
Years.
and you lose a lot of time and nothing, you just stay stuck in this position, right? And you've got to learn those skills as far as to reset, because I think the only way to really have that abundance and have the good marriage and have the good those times with the family and the fun Fridays and all that is you have to learn how to reset. Otherwise, you can't show up for
100%.
Yeah.
those people.
100%. And can I plus one that with saying that when we're not good in marriage, or we're not good in work, or we're not good with our self-care, or we're not, going out and spending time in relationships, it's okay, but find your people that can be strong when you are weak,
Love it.
Mhm.
right? You've got to have the community around you to help you, because I don't think we all operate 100% in every area all the
No,
time,
no.
right? We just don't, right? And if someone tells you they are, they're lying. And so you got to have people to lean on. And I'm trying to take the next level of my life to have authentic conversations
Mhm.
and to share where there's areas that I'm just not striking on all cylinders this week,
Yeah.
right? I need you to lift me up when I'm down, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You talk about the communities, and so you've got the Real Estate Investor Association here that you've led for quite a while. Is that is that kind of what drives that? Is you like to have that community of people there, and then you're teaching them. I mean, you're so giving of information. It's one of the things I think is awesome about you, but you're still giving them information for people to help them get into a better spot,
We hope, yeah.
right?
Danielle kind of asked this question a couple weeks ago. When we had dinner together, and why does this organization exist, and what's the goal with it? And I got to reflect, and it really stems from when I showed up in this town in 2011, and I went down to the courthouse. And 09 to 11 was a struggling year for a lot of real estate investors.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly was for me. And we were trying to figure out how to survive and still be in this real estate game and still pursue these dreams, right? And I went down, and I won't name names because they're burnt in the memory of my mind, but there were some individuals down in the courthouse, and they really gave me the cold shoulder, and they turned their back to me. And at that moment, I just said, I will not be that way for other investors. I will not kill the dream. I'll let reality kill the dream, but I'm not going to kill the dream. And real estate will teach you the reality's a struggle. But they about killed what allowed me to be in the hospital with my son for 30 days.
Wow.
Right? They about killed the financial benefits that real estate has provided for me. And lucky, blessed, opportunity, whatever it was, I kept showing up, right? Maybe just because I had to and I had no other skills, right? Right?
That works
I kept
too.
showing up, and then the next deal unfolded and it worked out. But I'd never wanted to be that guy for other real estate investors, which is, there's sometimes that's hard when your phone blows up and people are just want to take, right? But really it primarily the group that we run here locally and the communities that I'm trying to build stem out a result of like go dream, go big,
Yeah.
right? Like don't be the guy that shuts it down. Let others know what's possible out there.
Love it. Justin, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just absolutely awesome. We could probably go on for hours because
Right.
there's just so much stuff there. We can go down
Let's do it.
all these
Another
different ones. So
time.
we might have to do one
Yeah.
another time.
If there's a highlight here, let us know and we'll come back.
Well, we
and-
got
I
a
love it.
relationship one on the
Yes,
horizon.
we're
We
gonna
got-
have
we
to
got
do one of
Stephanie
those.
here. We'll
You need
just
to
talk
bring
about
her on,
family.
and I'll
Yeah.
all four of us get together.
Talk about kids. We'll talk about real estate. We'll talk about family. I mean, really, there's really just a few pillars in life that we've got to have to be able to be held high, right? And just make sure we're strengthening those pillars.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.